In every family, parents are often the natural link between siblings. While parents are alive, everyone still has a common place to return to, a familiar reason to meet, and someone standing in the middle to remind them of their bond and preserve family ties. Shared meals, holidays, or simply daily conversations are all maintained thanks to the presence of parents. Therefore, many people don't realize that it is their parents who are silently keeping family relationships close. But when parents pass away, the shared support system gradually disappears. Each person begins to return to their own life, becoming busier with work, their own families, and personal responsibilities. Meetings become less frequent, conversations become less frequent, and distance slowly builds. Initially, it's just a gentle estrangement due to circumstances. But over time, if not nurtured and cared for, that distance can turn into coldness. Many families don't have major conflicts, yet affection still fades simply because of a lack of regular connection. Furthermore, when parents are gone, many practical problems are more likely to arise, such as differences in thinking, lifestyles, or issues related to responsibilities and interests. If each person clings to their own ego without actively compromising and understanding, the gap will widen. Sadly, many people only realize the value of family ties when the bond has already become distant. At that point, returning to the way things were before is no longer easy. Understanding this principle helps us see that family bonds don't just last forever. They need to be nurtured through care, proactive communication, and regular, albeit small, meetings. When each person recognizes that family is irreplaceable, they will dedicate more time to maintaining those connections. A simple phone call, a short visit, or a heartfelt sharing is enough to sustain these bonds over the years. Watch this entire video to better understand why many families drift apart after the death of their parents, and how each of us can maintain lasting family bonds before it's too late. If you find this topic meaningful, please share the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe to the channel to continue following stories that help us understand others, ourselves, and appreciate the relationships in our lives more. 1. Parents are the natural link between siblings. When parents are still present in the family, all members tend to meet more often, talk more, and maintain a sense of closeness, even though each person has their own life. This connection is not always immediately apparent, but it plays a very profound role in maintaining family bonds. Parents are like the center of a circle, where children return, where differences are smoothed, and where everyone feels they still belong under one roof. During the years when their parents were still alive, many encounters between siblings happened naturally. Family meals, holidays, or even simple visits all shared one common reason: to see their parents. These occasions provided opportunities for siblings to maintain their bond. They had time to sit down, share stories about their lives, inquire about each other's work, and reminisce about old times. Their affection was nurtured in this way, without much effort. Parents are not only the ones who create reasons for their children to meet, but also the ones who maintain balance in their relationships. When misunderstandings or minor conflicts arise, parents are often the ones who step in to advise, remind, and help their children see the issue more calmly. Thanks to their presence, many conflicts are prevented from escalating, and many gaps are resolved before they can form. Peace in the family is thus maintained for a long time, and sometimes the children don't realize the silent contributions of their parents. What's special is that, while their parents are still alive, each child often retains a sense of belonging to their original family. Even after starting their own families or moving away for work, they know there's a place waiting for them to return. This feeling creates an invisible connection between siblings, as they all share a common anchor. When they think of family, they think of the same place, the same image, and the same memories. This very unity strengthens the bond between siblings over time. Conversely, when parents are gone, many families begin to feel the changes clearly. There are no longer the frequent meetings of the past, no longer a figure to remind them of their bond. Each person becomes busier with their own life. Meetings become less frequent, conversations become fewer, and the distance between them silently grows over time. Significantly, this estrangement often doesn't stem from major conflicts, but simply from the lack of the natural connection that once existed. Therefore, understanding the role of parents in preserving family bonds helps each person realize that the bond between siblings cannot be based solely on memories or blood ties, but needs to be maintained through proactive efforts. While parents are still alive, we should cherish family gatherings, because these are not only times spent with parents, but also times to nurture relationships between siblings. These seemingly small meetings create a foundation for lasting affection. Furthermore, as we grow older, each child needs to learn how to become a part of that connection. Instead of waiting for a special reason to meet, we can proactively call to check in, organize small get-togethers, or simply share everyday stories. Regular attention, even small gestures, helps maintain the relationship. Family bonds don't require grand gestures, but rather a consistent presence over time. Parents often spend their entire lives building and maintaining a family, but as they age, the responsibility of keeping the bond strong gradually shifts to their children. If everyone understands that sibling bonds are irreplaceable, they will appreciate them more and be more proactive in maintaining closeness. When the connection is shared by all members, the family will not depend entirely on one person, and the bond can continue to endure for generations. Furthermore, cherishing parents while they are still alive is also a way to deepen sibling bonds. By caring for parents together, sharing responsibilities, and experiencing important family moments together, siblings will have many shared experiences. These experiences become lasting memories, helping them maintain closeness even as circumstances change. Parents are a natural bond, but sibling relationships shouldn't depend solely on parental presence. Everyone needs to recognize that familial love is a precious spiritual asset, nurtured through care, understanding, and proactive engagement. When everyone is willing to stay in touch, meet up, and listen to one another, the family bond will be less likely to break. Ultimately, the most important thing is to understand that time with parents and siblings doesn't last forever. While you still have the chance, cherish the gatherings, the simple conversations, and the seemingly ordinary moments. It is these ordinary things that form the foundation for lasting bonds. When each person knows how to preserve family ties from today, the family will always be a warm place to return to, and the connection between siblings will remain strong as time passes. 2. When parents are gone, the common gathering place gradually disappears. This is a subtle but profound change that many families only realize after some time. When parents are alive, siblings naturally return to the same place for holidays, celebrations, and even joyful or sad occasions. The parents' home is not just a place to live, but also an emotional center, a place where everyone feels they still belong to the same family. When that central point is gone, the encounters no longer happen as naturally as before, and distance gradually emerges. In the past, many family gatherings were very simple. Just hearing that parents were slightly ill, or that they wanted their children and grandchildren to come home for a meal, everyone would arrange their time to return. These gatherings were not only to visit parents, but also an opportunity for siblings to see each other, catch up, and share changes in their lives. When parents are no longer around, the reasons for gatherings diminish, and without individual initiative, these meetings will become less frequent over time. Another important factor is that while parents are alive, they often play a connecting role. Parents remember each other's birthdays, remind their children to call and check in, or proactively organize small gatherings. Thanks to these reminders, siblings maintain regular contact. When parents pass away, this connecting role is no longer fulfilled, and if each person is busy with their own life, communication is easily disrupted. Furthermore, as adults, each person has their own family, their own job, and their own interests. Without parents as a common ground, priorities naturally shift to each person's own small family. This isn't wrong, but if there's a lack of awareness in maintaining family ties, sibling relationships can gradually become distant unintentionally. This distance often doesn't begin with major conflicts, but rather with less frequent meetings, less conversation, and gradually a lack of understanding between siblings. Another reason why gathering places disappear is related to emotional factors. Parents' homes used to hold many shared memories, from childhood to adulthood. When parents are gone, many feel that the house no longer evokes the same feeling, so they return less often. Without a place to recall shared memories, the emotional connection between siblings also diminishes. However, the disappearance of natural gathering places doesn't mean that family bonds must fade. The important thing is that each person understands that, from that point on, bonding is no longer something that happens naturally, but needs to be maintained through proactive effort. If parents previously created opportunities for these gatherings, siblings should take turns creating them. Simply by one person taking the initiative to invite everyone over for a meal or organize a small get-together, the connection can be maintained. This initiative doesn't need to be grand. Sometimes it's just a phone call to check in, a congratulatory message, or an invitation to meet up when you have free time. Small actions, repeated frequently, will keep the relationship warm. When people regularly hear from each other, distance is less likely to develop. Furthermore, everyone needs to understand that sibling relationships last a lifetime, but they won't automatically remain strong without care. Jobs may change, friends may change, but siblings are the people who share a part of childhood memories that no one else can replace. When viewing this relationship as a precious spiritual asset, each person will naturally give more attention to it. It's worth reflecting that while parents are alive, many people think the family will always be there, so they don't truly appreciate family gatherings. Only after their parents pass away do they realize how precious those family meals were. Therefore, while there's still a chance, staying in touch with siblings, creating opportunities to meet, and sharing life with each other is a way to continue maintaining the family spirit that parents built. In reality, families that remain close after the death of their parents are often those where the children understand the value of unity. They don't wait for major occasions to meet, but instead strive to maintain small gatherings, short visits, or regular phone calls. This regularity creates a sense that the family remains intact, even though the parents are no longer present. When parents are gone, it's natural for shared gathering places to gradually disappear, but family bonds don't necessarily vanish. If each person understands that from that moment on, they need to contribute to maintaining the connection, the family can remain as warm as before. The bond isn't found in a specific house, but in the care and initiative of each member. Ultimately, the most important thing to remember is that sibling bonds are not built solely on blood ties, but are also sustained by actions. When each person is willing to dedicate time to one another, willing to listen to one another, and willing to stay in touch despite busy lives, the meeting place may change, but the family bond remains. When this connection is nurtured with initiative and sincerity, the bond will not be diminished by time or circumstances. 3. Each person embarks on their own life with their own family and responsibilities. This is a natural part of the maturation process. When they are young, siblings often live together under one roof, eating meals together, studying together, and sharing similar memories. This closeness comes naturally because they share a space and are under the same care and guidance of their parents. But as they grow older, each person begins to pursue their own path, have their own job, and their own small family. From there, the pace of life changes, priorities shift, and distance between siblings gradually emerges if they don't actively maintain it. When starting a family, each person must dedicate a significant amount of time to new responsibilities. Work requires focus, children need care, finances need attention, and numerous small daily life issues need to be addressed. These responsibilities aren't negative, They are a sign of maturity. However, when all energy is focused on one's own family, sibling relationships, if not given adequate attention, can easily become strained. This isn't because affection diminishes, but because there's less time spent together than before. Besides the time factor, differences in living environments also cause distance to grow. Some people live in cities, others in the countryside. Some work far from home, and others are busy with packed schedules. When geographical distance increases, meeting becomes more difficult. Meetings that used to happen regularly now have to wait for special occasions. Without the conscious effort to maintain contact, geographical distance can easily turn into emotional distance. Another crucial factor is the difference in life perspectives. As individuals build their own lives, they are exposed to different environments, think differently, and perceive issues differently. This sometimes makes conversations less harmonious than they were in childhood. Without understanding and respect, small differences can become significant gaps. But if each person knows how to listen and accept the other's differences, the relationship can still be maintained sustainably. The reality is that families that maintain long-lasting bonds are often those whose members understand one crucial thing. Family ties cannot be strong without care and attention. While living together, closeness comes naturally, but when each person has their own life, the bond needs to be maintained proactively. A phone call to check in, a shared message, or a brief meeting is enough to keep the relationship warm. Small, repeated actions have far greater power than infrequent encounters. It's also important to understand that each person focusing on their own family doesn't mean that sibling affection diminishes. It's simply a change in how it's expressed. When young, affection is shown through frequent meetings. As adults, affection is expressed through timely care, a willingness to help when needed, and presence during important moments in each other's lives. The quality of the connection is sometimes more important than the number of meetings. It's worth reflecting that in today's busy life, people often think they'll have time later to reconnect. But time flies by so quickly, and if we don't actively maintain it, the distance will grow without us even realizing it. Therefore, instead of waiting for a special occasion, each person can proactively create small opportunities. A simple meal, a short visit, or even just a phone conversation can keep the family bond strong. Furthermore, empathy plays a crucial role. Knowing that everyone is busy with their own responsibilities reduces resentment when loved ones can't see them often. Empathy makes relationships smoother, avoiding unnecessary misunderstandings. When each person understands the other's circumstances and maintains genuine concern, family bonds won't be weakened by distance. Individual lives and responsibilities are inevitable aspects of adulthood, but sibling bonds can remain strong if each remembers that it's a lifelong relationship. Friends may change, colleagues may change, but those who share childhood memories are irreplaceable. Recognizing this, each person will naturally dedicate a little more time, attention, and initiative to maintaining the connection. Ultimately, what keeps a family together isn't living close or seeing each other often, but actively maintaining those bonds. When each person moves on with their own life, but still remembers to dedicate a small amount of time to their siblings, the family ties will remain strong. Regular attention, however small, can keep a relationship warm for many years. If you find the content valuable, please share this video with your loved ones to remind yourselves of the meaning of family, and subscribe to the Simple Philosophy channel to continue following lessons that will make life more profound and heartwarming every day. 4. Property interests sometimes give rise to subtle conflicts, a common occurrence in many families when they enter the stage of dividing responsibilities and rights. While parents are alive, assets are usually managed jointly, and people rarely think about individual ownership, so relationships remain naturally harmonious. But when assets begin to be discussed as a matter for division, thoughts of individual rights emerge, and without understanding and compromise, conflicts can silently develop without anyone noticing from the outset. The possessions themselves don't cause conflict. It's how people perceive their value. When someone feels they've contributed more but received less, feelings of injustice can arise. When another person thinks they're in a more difficult situation and therefore deserve preferential treatment, comparisons easily emerge. If these thoughts aren't openly discussed, they accumulate and over time create an invisible distance between family members. Another reason conflicts easily arise is a difference in perspective on fairness. Some believe that equal distribution is fair. Others believe that it should be based on the level of contribution. And some think that priority should be given to those who care for their parents more. Each viewpoint has its own rationale, but when these viewpoints are not discussed respectfully, disagreements can easily escalate into disputes. Unfortunately, many families don't experience major conflicts immediately, but rather develop underlying feelings of dissatisfaction, causing relationships to gradually become strained. Besides the element of self-interest, emotions also play a significant role. When it comes to parental inheritance, many people think not only of its material value, but also of the feeling of being loved and appreciated. If someone feels undervalued in the decision-making process, they are easily hurt, even if the share of the inheritance is not insignificant. Therefore, sometimes the conflict lies not in the value of the assets, but in the feeling of being treated fairly and being listened. It's noteworthy that many property disputes don't stem from great greed, but rather from small thoughts like comparisons, suspicion, or unintentional remarks that make others feel undervalued. When these feelings aren't addressed promptly, they accumulate and make subsequent conversations more tense. This explains why some families that were once very harmonious gradually drift apart after discussing property. To mitigate these underlying conflicts, the first and most important step is maintaining transparency in all decisions related to assets. When all information is clearly shared, suspicion is greatly reduced. Transparency not only helps everyone understand the situation, but also creates a sense that all members are treated with equal respect. When trust is maintained, the likelihood of conflict is significantly decreased. Furthermore, a yielding attitude plays a crucial role in preserving family relationships. Material possessions may bring convenience, but family affection is irreplaceable. When each person is willing to take a step back to maintain harmony, the relationship will be far more enduring than if everyone tries to gain the upper hand. Many people later realize that the difference in wealth is not as significant as the value of the harmony they once lost. Another crucial factor is understanding each other's circumstances. Within each family, siblings often face different situations. Some are more stable, others more difficult. When each person can put themselves in the other's shoes, decisions become gentler and less hurtful. Understanding prevents conversations from turning into arguments, instead transforming them into collaborative efforts to find reasonable solutions. In reality, families that maintain long-term cohesion are often those that view assets as a means to support their lives, rather than a measure of the value of their family ties. When people prioritize feelings over self-interest, decisions become easier. Conversely, when self-interest is prioritized, even small differences can easily escalate into major conflicts. Therefore, the way we perceive assets greatly influences how family members treat each other during crucial periods. Furthermore, maintaining regular family gatherings helps alleviate stress related to property. When people regularly talk, share their lives, and care for each other, the relationship isn't confined to meetings about rights and benefits. This emotional connection reminds everyone that they are not just people involved in shared property, but also people who grew up together and shared many memories. Ultimately, the most important thing is for each person to remind themselves that material possessions may change over time, but family bonds, once damaged, are very difficult to mend. From a long-term perspective, maintaining harmony within the family is far more valuable than gaining an advantage in the short term. Peace in family relationships is a spiritual foundation that no amount of material wealth can replace. Property interests sometimes lead to subtle conflicts. But if each person maintains transparency, understanding, and compromise, these conflicts can be prevented early on. When feelings are prioritized over interests, the family will remain a peaceful haven to return to, no matter how life outside changes. 5. Comparison in life widens the gap between people. This happens subtly, but profoundly affects relationships. Initially, comparison might just be a fleeting thought, seeing others more successful, wealthier, or more noticed, and wondering why one hasn't achieved the same. But when this thought is repeated many times, it gradually becomes a habit of viewing life through the lens of superiority and inferiority. And from there, the distance between people begins to form. Comparison leads people to view each other based on status rather than feelings. When someone constantly thinks that those more successful than themselves are more admirable and those less successful are less valuable, relationships naturally lose their equality. Connections between people are built on sincerity and respect, but when the pursuit of superiority comes into play, genuine emotions are gradually replaced by a sense of competition. At this point, even while still talking and meeting, the distance between people begins to grow, sometimes without even realizing it. One of the most obvious effects of comparison is feelings of inferiority or envy. Constantly looking at the achievements of others makes it easy for people to forget their own journey. They feel slower, less capable, and gradually lose their self-confidence. This inferiority complex causes people to withdraw, share less, and avoid contact with those they perceive as superior. This withdrawal widens the gap in relationships, even though no one wants this to happen. Conversely, when someone feels superior to others, a distance emerges in a different way. This sense of superiority leads them to listen less, empathize less, and sometimes unintentionally create distance through attitude or words. Others may sense this difference and gradually distance themselves to avoid feeling judged. Thus, regardless of whether one is in a lower or higher position in comparison, the ultimate result is that the gap between people widens. Within families, comparisons and rivalries are also a cause of strained relationships. When siblings are compared in terms of income, success, or filial piety, a sense of competition can arise even unintentionally. One person may feel pressured to prove themselves, while another feels undervalued. Over time, these small emotions accumulate and diminish the natural closeness within the family. This isn't because familial love has changed, but because perspectives on each other have shifted. In both friendships and work environments, comparisons create invisible barriers. When friends begin to measure each other by success or status, the comfort of communication gradually disappears. Those who are more successful may hesitate to share for fear of being perceived as boastful, while those who are less successful may avoid contact for fear of comparison. Neither side intends to distance themselves, but a gap still forms simply because each person harbors different thoughts. One reason comparisons are so common is that people often see the results of others, but not the process behind them. When you only look at current success without understanding the efforts, failures, and difficulties others have gone through, comparisons become unfair. This leads many people to feel their lives are less fortunate, when in reality, everyone is on a different path with different starting points and circumstances. To bridge the gap created by comparisons, it's crucial to learn to see each person's value in their own way. Success isn't measured solely by money or status, but also by personal growth, inner peace, and the ability to live a meaningful life. Understanding that each person has their own unique journey will reduce comparisons and make it easier to respect each other's differences. This respect is the foundation for lasting relationships. Another way to reduce comparison is to focus on your own progress. When people aim to become a better version of themselves, instead of trying to outdo others, the feeling of competition diminishes significantly. Growth then becomes a positive motivator instead of a source of pressure. When the mind is no longer preoccupied with winning or losing, people are more open to those around them and relationships become smoother. Furthermore, acknowledging the success of others with sincerity also helps to reduce the gap. When a person can rejoice in the achievements of others without feeling inferior, they are creating a healthy relationship environment. This sincerity is often very noticeable and helps to bring relationships closer. Conversely, when the success of others is always viewed through a comparative lens, a gap is inevitable. In reality, the most enduring relationships are often those that don't emphasize winning or losing. In such relationships, each person can develop in their own way without feeling pressured to prove themselves better than others. This relaxed atmosphere allows people to easily share, support each other, and progress together, rather than silently competing. Ultimately, it's important to remember that life isn't a race where everyone has to reach the same finish line. Each person has their own path, pace, and goals. Understanding this will reduce the emphasis on winning and losing, and people will begin to see each other with more empathy. As comparison diminishes, the distance in relationships narrows, and connections between people become more genuine and enduring over time. 6. Infrequent meetings can lead to fading feelings over time, a readily observable reality in many relationships. When people frequently meet, chat, and share small things in life, they feel close and connected. But as the distance in time and space increases, the natural connection gradually diminishes. This isn't because the feelings disappear instantly, but because they are no longer nurtured as regularly as before. Human relationships are like a small flame. If nurtured regularly, it will always be warm. If neglected for too long, that flame will weaken until only faint embers remain. Infrequent meetings are like not adding fuel to the fire, causing the closeness that once existed to fade over time. Many people think that true feelings won't change even after a long time apart, but reality shows that connection always needs to be maintained through presence and care. When people see each other frequently, they easily understand each other's current lives. They know whether the other person is happy or struggling, what they are striving for, and what they are hoping for. This understanding helps maintain empathy and makes the relationship feel natural. But when they see each other less often, this information gradually disappears. Each person enters their own rhythm of life and no longer follows each other's journey as before. This lack of understanding creates an invisible distance, making future conversations feel more awkward. Another factor that causes feelings to fade is the gradual emergence of a sense of estrangement. When two people who were once very close haven't seen each other for years, a reunion might still be joyful, but it lacks the naturalness of the past. Shared stories become fewer, new memories aren't created, and each person has their own experiences that the other doesn't know about. Over time, the relationship may still exist, but it no longer has the depth it had in the days when they met regularly. This is even more noticeable within families. When parents are alive, siblings often have reasons to gather regularly, as shared opportunities for reunions are maintained. But when those gathering places are gone, and everyone is busy with their own lives, meetings become less frequent. Initially, it's just a little less often. Then it becomes a once-in-a-lifetime encounter, and eventually, it's reduced to brief exchanges of greetings. This isn't because familial affection has disappeared, but because the connection is no longer maintained regularly enough to keep the warmth it once had. The same applies to friendships. People who were very close during school or work often feel connected because they had opportunities to talk every day. But when each person moves to a different environment, the pace of life changes, and meeting becomes more difficult. If they don't proactively maintain contact, the relationship can easily fall into a prolonged silence. This silence doesn't end immediately, but over time, it widens the gap. It's noteworthy that feelings don't fade simply because time passes, but because of a lack of interaction. Some relationships remain strong, even after many years of separation, because people maintain the habit of checking in, sharing, or meeting whenever possible. This shows that the important factor isn't geographical distance, but the level of connection maintained. Just a few sincere words of inquiry, a short phone call, or a regular meeting can keep a relationship warm. To prevent feelings from fading, each person needs to be more proactive in maintaining the connection. It doesn't need to be grand gestures. Just small, regular acts, like asking how someone is doing, sharing a story from the day, or making time to see each other whenever possible. These small things create a feeling that the relationship is still valued, and this feeling of being cared for helps sustain the relationship over time. Furthermore, when reuniting after a long time, opening up and sharing is also very important. Many people are hesitant to talk about their lives because they feel they haven't been in touch for too long, but sharing is the quickest way to restore closeness. When people are willing to tell each other about their experiences, the distance created by time will gradually narrow. Sincerity is always the bridge that helps renew relationships. The busier life gets, the easier it is to forget that relationships need nurturing, just like other important things. Work, responsibilities, and daily worries may take up a lot of time, but dedicating even a small portion to maintaining connections will prevent feelings from fading. Relationships that endure over the years are often not those that last every day, but rather those that consistently show care and attention as time passes. If you find this lesson meaningful, take the time to reach out to someone you haven't seen in a long time. Even a simple greeting can rekindle a relationship that's seemed distant. And if you want to hear more tips on maintaining friendships and lasting relationships, subscribe to the channel and share this article with your cherished friends to spread the value of connection together. 7. Unresolved misunderstandings often begin subtly, almost unnoticed. An unexplained remark, a misinterpreted action, or an unintentional hurtful act that goes unaddressed. Initially, everything seems normal. People still meet and talk, but a small rift has formed. If this rift isn't addressed, it will grow over time and become a distance. In many relationships, distance doesn't stem from one major event, but from small things accumulating over years. When one person feels misunderstood but unheard, they begin to distance themselves to avoid hurt. When the other person notices the change but doesn't ask, they also gradually fall silent. Both sides believe the other has changed, while the real reason is simply an unexplained misunderstanding. People often tend to avoid awkward conversations. Many believe that time will heal the wounds, or that speaking out will only complicate matters. However, silence doesn't make misunderstandings disappear. It only causes them to linger. When emotions are held back for too long, they easily turn into resentment, then disappointment, and finally indifference. At that point, even if the two people still see each other, the intimacy is no longer what it once was. This is very common within families. Siblings or relatives sometimes feel unhappy over a small matter, but choose to remain silent because they think it's not worth talking about. The other person, unaware of what happened, continues to behave normally. This prolonged misunderstanding leads both parties to feel that the other no longer cares about their feelings. From a very small incident, a psychological distance begins to form and grows larger. The same is true in friendships. Some friendships that were once very close gradually become distant due to misunderstandings that go unexplained. One person thinks their friend has changed, while the other feels they are no longer respected. Neither takes the initiative to speak up, and both take a step back. Over time, conversations become less frequent, meetings become less common, and eventually, each goes their own way, despite having been very close before. It's unfortunate that many relationships could have been saved if minor misunderstandings had been resolved early on. Just a frank conversation, a gentle explanation, or a timely apology can bridge a great deal of distance. When people are willing to express their true feelings, the other person has a chance to understand and adjust. Conversely, when things are kept bottled up, misunderstandings persist and silently weaken the relationship. Another reason misunderstandings easily accumulate is the habit of making assumptions. Without asking directly, People often interpret the actions of others based on their own emotions. If they are sad, they may easily think that the other person intentionally hurt them. If they are disappointed, they may easily assume that the other person no longer values the relationship. These assumptions are often inaccurate, but because they are not verified, they gradually become ingrained beliefs, widening the gap between them. To avoid this situation, proactive communication is crucial. When something makes you uncomfortable, calmly expressing your feelings will help both sides understand each other better. There's no need for heated arguments. Simply share your feelings and listen to the other person's response. Often, after just a few minutes of conversation, both realize that it was just a minor misunderstanding and completely solvable. Furthermore, learning to put yourself in someone else's shoes also helps reduce misunderstandings. When you see things from the other person's perspective, you can easily realize that many actions aren't as bad as you think. Empathy helps calm emotions and opens the door to a positive conversation. When both people maintain a listening attitude instead of being defensive, the relationship has a chance to be mended. Another crucial factor is patience. Not all misunderstandings are resolved immediately. Some emotions need time to subside, and some wounds require more attention to heal. However, if both parties maintain goodwill and are willing to stay connected, the gap will gradually narrow. The most frightening thing is not the misunderstanding itself, but the fact that both parties give up without trying to explain. In our busy lives, we often think that small things aren't worth mentioning. But it's these small things, repeated many times, that can change a relationship. A delayed explanation today can create distance tomorrow. Conversely, a timely conversation can maintain a lasting bond. Therefore, nurturing a relationship isn't just about big actions, but also about paying attention to the smallest details. Lasting relationships aren't usually those without misunderstandings, but rather those where misunderstandings are resolved early. When people dare to speak up, dare to listen, and dare to adjust, distance is less likely to form. Honesty coupled with respect is the bridge that helps maintain relationships over the years. Therefore, when you realize something is unclear in a relationship, don't let it fade away in silence. A sincere conversation today can prevent years of estrangement later. When small misunderstandings are resolved promptly, feelings won't be eroded by time. On the contrary, they will become stronger thanks to understanding and trust. 8. As we enter adulthood, each person gradually builds their own life, with their own family, responsibilities, and new priorities. This causes many sibling relationships within the family to change over time. It's not because affection diminishes, but because the focus of life shifts. Adults often prioritize their immediate family, which is a natural part of life. When they were young, siblings lived together under one roof, eating, studying, and living together every day, so the bond formed very naturally. Parents took care of everything, and there was a common place to return to for holidays and special occasions. As they grew older, each started their own family, moved to different places, and began their own journeys, and the connection was no longer as daily as before. Time and distance gradually diminished this closeness if there was no active effort to maintain it. The immediate family becomes a priority because it is where direct responsibilities are tied. Adults must care for their children, look after their spouse, manage finances, and secure the future of their own home. These responsibilities consume a large portion of their time and energy, naturally reducing the time available for other relationships. This is not a sign of neglect, but rather a real allocation of resources according to the practical needs of life. When someone becomes a parent, they understand that every decision they make directly affects their children. Therefore, they tend to devote most of their attention to their immediate family to ensure stability. Sibling gatherings may become less frequent, and long conversations may become less common, but that doesn't mean family bonds disappear. It simply changes how they are expressed. Besides family responsibilities, Work pressure also leaves adults with little time to maintain broader relationships. Many work long hours, commute long distances, or face financial pressures, leaving them with very limited free time. When they do have time off, they often prioritize their immediate family first, as that is where they feel the need to care for and where they receive the most direct support. Another reason is the difference in living circumstances. With different living standards, work environments, and economic conditions, daily routines also differ. Those with busy jobs find it harder to schedule time compared to those with flexible work schedules. Those living far from home cannot return as often as those living nearby. These differences make it more difficult to meet up with siblings, even though they still want to maintain close relationships. Furthermore, as people mature, they develop their own values and ways of thinking. Their views on parenting, finances, and lifestyle may differ. When they don't interact frequently, these differences can sometimes make people feel more distant than when they lived together. This also contributes to a less close relationship if there isn't mutual understanding and respect. However, prioritizing immediate family doesn't mean neglecting extended family. Many people still show care and concern for their siblings through simple things like calling, texting on special occasions, or trying to arrange meetings when possible. Even if meetings are less frequent, these small gestures help maintain connections and remind everyone that family bonds still exist. It's important to understand that this change is natural and shouldn't be viewed with resentment. As everyone is busy with their own lives, it's understandable that they'll spend more time with their immediate family. Instead of feeling sad about not seeing each other as often, family members can proactively create opportunities for togetherness or stay in touch in ways that suit their individual circumstances. A lasting relationship doesn't depend solely on how often or how infrequently you see each other, but rather on respect and a willingness to maintain it. When siblings understand that each has their own responsibilities, they become more empathetic to each other's busy schedules. This empathy helps avoid misunderstandings that the other person is distant or no longer interested. Furthermore, educating children about the value of family ties helps maintain connections between generations. When children meet their siblings and cousins and hear about family traditions, these relationships continue to grow. The extended family remains intact even though each person lives in a different smaller family. For adults, prioritizing their immediate family is a natural progression in life. Each stage has its own focus, and caring for one's own home is the most important responsibility in adulthood. However, if care and proactive connection are maintained, sibling bonds can endure over the years. The bond isn't about seeing each other every day, but about being there for each other when needed, offering genuine support. When viewed in this way, we will no longer feel sad seeing people see each other less often, but understand that each person is walking their own path. Even if the distance may be greater, if there is still respect and goodwill in our hearts, family ties will always have a firm place in everyone's life. 9. In many families, while the parents are still alive, there is always one person who naturally becomes the central figure connecting the family. This is often the father, mother, or an older sibling who maintains the habit of calling, checking in, organizing gatherings, reminding everyone of anniversaries and holidays, or simply creating reasons for the whole family to get together. Thanks to this person who acts as a connector, siblings, despite their busy schedules, maintain a regular connection. When the person who played the connecting role is no longer there, many families begin to notice a very clear void. No one takes the initiative to remind everyone about family gatherings. No one calls to check in on each other, and no one organizes meetings. This absence causes meetings to become less frequent, and over time, rare. The relationships don't disappear immediately, but they begin to fall apart silently. In reality, most people are busy with their work and families. Everyone thinks they'll meet up when they have the chance, or call each other when they're free. But because no one takes the initiative to arrange it, those plans keep getting postponed. A month goes by, Then several months pass, and when they look back, it's been a long time since they last saw each other. Distance often doesn't start from conflict, but from a lack of initiative in connecting. Another important factor is the reluctance to bother others. Many people think that siblings are busy, and therefore don't want to call often or invite each other out for fear of inconveniencing others. When everyone thinks this way, the result is that no one takes the initiative to contact each other. The relationship, therefore, becomes quiet, not because of a lack of affection, but because there is no one to initiate communication. In families where the parents were the central figure, all activities revolved around them. During holidays, everyone returned to their parents' home. Anniversaries of death were also celebrated there, and gatherings took place in familiar locations. When the parents are gone, these shared locations disappear. Without a default place to return to, everyone needs to agree on times and places, which is much more difficult than before. Without someone to take the lead in organizing, gatherings are easily postponed. Many families can maintain their connection if someone takes on the role of connector, but not everyone is willing to step in. This role requires patience, time, and genuine care. The person acting as connector must proactively call, text, and remind people, sometimes accepting that people won't always respond immediately. Without someone willing to do this, the natural bond will weaken. Geographical distance also makes the lack of connection more apparent. When siblings live in different provinces or cities, meeting up requires prior planning, someone to suggest a time, and someone to agree on a location. Without someone taking the initiative, everyone will continue living their own lives. As time goes by, familiarity and communication gradually decreases, making future contact more difficult. It's noteworthy that as social gatherings decrease, so do opportunities for sharing. Previously, when people met frequently, it was easier to share stories about their lives, understand each other's circumstances, and feel closer. With infrequent meetings, each person learns about the other's life through very limited information, sometimes only through indirect accounts. This lack of understanding of each other's current lives widens the psychological distance between them. A lack of connection also makes important occasions easily overlooked. Birthdays, anniversaries, or significant family events can easily pass by in silence without anyone reminding them. Moments that should have helped to strengthen bonds don't happen, making feelings of distance even more apparent. Gradually, people get used to less contact and come to see it as normal. However, the reality is that if just one person takes the initiative, the relationship can change significantly. When someone takes the initiative to call, suggest meeting up, or simply creates a group chat for everyone to exchange ideas, the connection is rekindled. It doesn't have to be anything grand. With consistency and sincerity, relationships will gradually warm up. Being a facilitator isn't a mandatory responsibility, but if each family has someone willing to do so, maintaining family bonds becomes much easier. That person doesn't need to do anything complicated. Simply checking in occasionally, reminding everyone of upcoming gatherings, or sharing general family information is sufficient. Small, repeated actions like these will keep the flow of relationships alive. Each person can also create a habit of communication on their own without waiting for others to initiate it. A short call, a text message, or a greeting on a special occasion can all revive a sense of closeness. When many people take the initiative, the role of connection no longer depends on a single individual, and relationships become more sustainable. The lack of someone to initiate connections causes relationships to become fragmented, not because feelings fade, but because the busy pace of life diminishes initiative. Understanding this, each person can ask themselves what they can do to keep family bonds strong. Sometimes, just a small step, a simple greeting, is enough to prevent prolonged silence in relationships. Family ties are maintained not only through shared memories, but also through regular actions of connection in the present. 10. Human emotions are not fixed forever. They change over time with experiences, and especially with life circumstances. As living conditions change, thoughts change, responsibilities change, and the way people perceive relationships gradually changes as well. Many people feel sad when they see that feelings are no longer the same as before. But if you look deeper, you will understand that this change largely stems from circumstances rather than people becoming cold and indifferent. When people live in the same environment, under the same roof, sharing similar difficulties, they tend to empathize and feel close. Shared memories create a natural sense of connection. But as each person moves on to a different stage of life, with their own jobs, families, responsibilities, and changing time and priorities, what was once the center of their lives no longer holds the same place, as current life demands many other concerns. Economic circumstances also strongly influence how people think. When life is difficult, people tend to rely on and support each other more easily. When conditions improve, each person tends to be more self-reliant, needing less support from others. Independence is positive, but sometimes it reduces the frequency of connection, making the feeling of closeness less pronounced than before. Geographical distance is also a significant factor. When living close together, meeting is easy. A short appointment is enough to maintain closeness. When living far apart, each meeting requires time and expense to arrange, so the frequency of meetings decreases. With fewer meetings, there are fewer shared conversations, and understanding gradually diminishes, creating the feeling that people's hearts have changed, even though in reality, circumstances have simply made connection more difficult. Another major change comes from roles in life. As each person becomes a parent, shouldering the financial responsibility for their small family, much of their energy is devoted to these new obligations. Priorities are no longer the same. This doesn't mean old feelings disappear, but rather that their place on the priority list has changed. Without understanding this, many people easily assume that the other person has changed their mind, when in reality, they are simply trying to fulfill their new responsibilities. Human psychology also changes with experience. People who have gone through difficulties or experienced significant pressure in their work or life tend to become more practical in their thinking. They consider their time and energy more carefully than before and participate less in unnecessary meetings. This change is sometimes misinterpreted as coldness, but in reality, it's simply their adjustment to suit their new circumstances. There are also instances where circumstances change the perspective on benefits and responsibilities. When financial, property-related, or vested interests come into play, people tend to become more cautious. They consider things more carefully, calculate more, and sometimes distance themselves to avoid trouble. These changes might give others the impression that their feelings are no longer the same, but in reality, the circumstances have forced them to think differently. It's important to understand that changes in people's hearts aren't always negative. Many changes are signs of maturity. When people understand their responsibilities better, they act differently than before. With more experience, they see problems more realistically. These changes may reduce outward closeness, but they don't necessarily erase inner concern. However, without proactive efforts to maintain the relationship, the distance created by circumstances can gradually become a real emotional distance. When there is little contact and sharing, misunderstandings easily arise. When misunderstandings are not explained, the feeling of distance intensifies. Therefore, regardless of changing circumstances, proactively reconnecting remains crucial to preventing relationships from fading. Everyone can make a difference through small actions. A phone call, a special message, or proactively arranging a meeting can help maintain a sense of closeness. These seemingly simple actions, when repeated regularly, create lasting connections, regardless of changing circumstances. Understanding that people's feelings change with changing circumstances helps us to be less resentful and less hurtful. Instead of thinking that others no longer appreciate us, we can recognize that they are living in a different phase of life with different priorities. When we understand this, we become more empathetic and realize that if we want to maintain a relationship, proactive effort from both sides is always necessary. Life is constantly changing. Circumstances are constantly evolving, and people change with it. The important thing isn't to keep everything exactly the same, but to adapt to that change while maintaining sincerity. As long as sincerity remains, relationships can endure, even if the way they are expressed changes over time. 11. The bond between siblings, or any close relationship for that matter, is not only maintained by shared memories of the past, but also nurtured by proactive care in the present. When children live close together, see each other daily, share meals and everyday stories, so affection is naturally maintained. But as adults, each person has their own life, their own work, their own family, and the connection is no longer as natural as before. At this point, the deciding factor in maintaining family ties is proactive care from each individual. Many people think that family ties are something that's readily available and therefore don't need effort to maintain. They believe that even after a long time apart, the feelings will remain the same. But reality shows that any relationship needs nurturing. If there's a long period without checking in, talking, or sharing, the feeling of closeness will gradually diminish. This isn't because the feelings disappear, but because the connection is interrupted for too long, causing the distance to grow. Proactive care can sometimes be expressed through small actions. A phone call to check on someone's well-being, a birthday message, or a simple inquiry about a loved one's difficulties is enough to maintain closeness. These small, repeated actions create a feeling that even though people are far apart, their feelings remain. When people feel remembered, they naturally want to reciprocate that care, thus strengthening the relationship. Conversely, when everyone waits for the other person to take the initiative, the silence will linger. Each person thinks they are too busy to contact and assumes the other person understands. As time passes, the silence becomes a habit, and habits become distance. When they want to reconnect, many feel awkward because they haven't been in contact for so long, and the distance becomes even harder to bridge. In many families, while parents are alive, regular meetings happen naturally because there's always a reason to get together. After parents pass away, these opportunities decrease, and if no one takes the initiative to reconnect, relationships can easily become distant. Therefore, proactive care is not just an individual act, but also a way to maintain family bonds. Simply having one person regularly remind everyone to meet, organize small gatherings, or simply maintain regular contact will prevent family ties from fading. Proactive care is also demonstrated through listening and sharing. When loved ones face difficulties, timely encouragement can help them feel supported and less alone. When they achieve success, sincere congratulations can amplify their joy. These seemingly small actions create a deep sense of connection because people always need to be understood and cared for. Many people believe that simply having affection in their hearts is enough without needing to express it much. However, feelings that aren't expressed are difficult to feel. People can't see what's in another person's heart. They can only sense it through actions. When care is shown through concrete actions, feelings become clearer and more noticeable, thereby creating lasting trust and closeness. Proactive care also helps reduce misunderstandings in relationships. When communication is infrequent, people are more likely to misinterpret each other's intentions. A long period of silence can sometimes make someone feel unappreciated, but a simple inquiry is enough to dispel that feeling. Maintaining regular contact helps people understand each other better, thereby minimizing unnecessary distance. In modern life, everyone is busy and has many responsibilities, but busyness is not a reason to neglect family ties. Just spending a few minutes each week calling or texting to check in is enough to keep relationships warm. The important thing isn't the length of time, but the consistency and sincerity of the action. It's worth noting that proactive caring often creates a ripple effect. When one person starts showing more interest, others will sense it and gradually become more proactive. A small act can create a big change in how people connect with each other. Conversely, if everyone keeps their distance, relationships will gradually become cold, which no one really wants. Family bonds don't naturally strengthen over time. They need to be nurtured with continuous care and attention. Proactive care isn't the responsibility of one person alone, but something every member can contribute. When each person takes the time to check in, share, and meet, the relationship will always have a chance to be maintained and grow. Life may change people's places of residence, jobs, and living circumstances, but proactive care can keep feelings from changing with distance. As long as you remember each other, check in on each other, and spend time together, family bonds can remain strong, no matter how much time passes. Therefore, the deciding factor in maintaining close relationships is not whether you live near or far, nor is it about favorable or difficult circumstances, but rather the proactive care from each individual. If each person starts with small actions, consistently maintained over time, the relationship will always have the opportunity to be preserved and deepened. 12. In many families, sibling bonds are forged through years of growing up together, sharing both hardships and joys. However, as people mature, one of the most common causes of rifts is related to money. This isn't because people become more greedy, but because when material gain comes into play, each person's perspective and emotions change. Therefore, knowing how to compromise on money becomes crucial for maintaining lasting family relationships. Money is merely a means to an end, but when people place too much emphasis on it, they easily forget the value of relationships. A sum of money can solve many material problems, but it cannot buy back lost bonds. Meanwhile, a little compromise can sometimes maintain harmony for many years. Those who understand this often choose a gentler approach in situations involving financial gain, because they realize that lasting affection is always more valuable than immediate benefits. In families, financial conflicts often begin with very small things. It could be an unclear division of assets, a feeling of receiving less than others, or simply a minor misunderstanding about shared expenses. When each person stubbornly holds their own opinion and neither is willing to compromise, tension escalates over time. Conversely, if just one person takes the initiative to compromise, the atmosphere will immediately calm down, creating an opportunity for everyone to find a more harmonious solution. Being accommodating in financial matters doesn't mean accepting losses forever, but rather understanding that maintaining harmony is sometimes more important than calculating gains and losses. In many cases, the difference isn't huge, but prolonged arguments can deeply wound relationships. When someone prioritizes family ties over small gains, they are contributing to preventing the relationship from breaking down due to issues that could be resolved through tolerance. It's noteworthy that when someone genuinely shows willingness to compromise, others often feel more comfortable and more receptive. Compromise signals that relationships are more important than money, thus fostering an atmosphere of trust. When trust is maintained, communication and agreement become easier, minimizing unnecessary misunderstandings. In many families, major disputes don't often stem from significant property values, but rather from feelings of disrespect or unfair treatment. When people feel wronged, they tend to react strongly, even letting emotions override reason. At this point, timely compromise can de-escalate the situation, creating an opportunity for everyone to calm down and view the issue more objectively. Knowing how to compromise also demonstrates a long-term vision in family relationships. Money may come and go, but deeply damaged family bonds are very difficult to mend. Many people later realize that past conflicts weren't worth sacrificing the bond between siblings. If they could have taken a step back from the beginning, things might have been different. Therefore, compromise is not a sign of weakness, but a choice made by those who understand the lasting value of affection. In modern life, everyone faces their own financial pressures, making money-related issues increasingly sensitive. This necessitates learning to remain calm and tolerant in situations involving personal gain. By putting ourselves in others' shoes, we can empathize more easily and avoid being overly concerned with calculating every small detail. Empathy is the foundation that allows compromise to become natural, not forced. A family that maintains long-term harmony is not one without disagreements, but one where everyone knows when to step back. This stepping back helps avoid angry words that can cause lasting hurt. When emotions subside, people are more likely to view issues rationally and find fairer solutions for everyone. Being considerate about money also helps build a positive image in the eyes of loved ones. People who are always willing to share and don't dwell too much on winning or losing are often more trusted and respected. This trust becomes the foundation for a lasting relationship because people know that when problems arise, they can still solve them together with mutual respect. It's important to understand that compromise doesn't mean disregarding all principles, but rather maintaining a gentle approach to problem solving. When communication is necessary, you can still clearly state your point of view, but do so calmly and with goodwill. When words are free from tension, others are more likely to listen, making the problem-solving process much smoother. In many cases, simply one person choosing to compromise a little can change things for the better. Compromise acts like a bridge, bringing parties closer together instead of standing on opposing sides. When people sense this goodwill, they are more willing to share and cooperate, helping to resolve issues quickly without causing harm. Ultimately, money is something that can be calculated, but family affection is something immeasurable. When people understand that long-term relationships are always more valuable than short-term gains, they naturally learn to behave more gently in sensitive situations. Therefore, compromise regarding money not only helps avoid many rifts, but also contributes to maintaining strong family bonds over the years. 13. Sibling bonds are not only formed by blood, but are also maintained through constant care and connection. When they are young, siblings live under the same roof, see each other every day, eat together, study together, and share ordinary stories. It is these repeated moments that silently create a natural bond. However, as they grow older and each enters their own life, if they lack the proactive nurturing of these bonds, even the closest relationships can gradually fade over time. Sincerity is the first foundation for a lasting sibling relationship. Sincerity isn't about grand words, but about simple yet consistent acts of care. A phone call to check on a busy relative, a text message asking about their health when the weather changes, or simply remembering each other's birthdays. These small things create a feeling of being remembered and appreciated. When people feel sincerity, they naturally want to maintain a closer relationship. Besides sincerity, regular meetings are also very important. When siblings don't see each other for a long time, the psychological distance increases, sometimes without even realizing it. Stories that were once easy to share become hesitant, and small issues become difficult to discuss. Conversely, when siblings have a habit of meeting regularly, even if it's just a simple meal or a short visit, familiarity is maintained and the feeling of closeness remains intact. Modern life keeps many people busy with work and their own families, so meeting up isn't always easy. However, the important thing isn't how often you meet, but maintaining consistency. A meeting every few months, but sustained over the long term, is better than only meeting on special occasions and then drifting apart for long periods. Regularity helps keep the relationship uninterrupted and creates a feeling that siblings are still present in each other's lives. Sincerity is also demonstrated in the way one listens. When people meet, many often only talk about work or external matters, rarely sharing their true feelings. Meanwhile, lasting relationships are often built on genuine conversations, where each person can talk about their difficulties, worries, or the small joys in their lives. When listened to with genuine care, people feel understood and the relationship deepens. Another factor that helps maintain lasting sibling bonds is initiative. If everyone waits for the other to contact first, the distance will only grow. Simply having one person take the initiative to text, invite them to meet, or proactively check in when they know the other is going through a difficult time will keep the relationship warm. Taking initiative isn't just anyone's responsibility. It's something everyone should do to maintain the family bond. In many families, traditional gatherings such as anniversaries, holidays, or family meals are important opportunities for siblings to see each other. However, if they only meet on obligatory occasions, the relationship can easily become superficial. When there are more spontaneous encounters outside of these occasions, such as having dinner together, visiting parents, or simply dropping by each other's homes during free time, the bond becomes much more natural and intimate. Time is also a strong factor influencing family relationships. If too much time passes without contact, people may feel hesitant to restart conversations, further delaying reconnection. Therefore, maintaining regular contact, even with just short greetings, helps keep the relationship open and easily rekindled when needed. When the connection is uninterrupted, siblings will feel that sharing and supporting each other comes naturally. Sincerity and frequent interaction also help to minimize unnecessary misunderstandings. When communication is infrequent, people are more likely to speculate or misinterpret each other's words. Conversely, with frequent face-to-face conversations, issues can be clarified from the outset, preventing small misunderstandings from accumulating into large gaps. Simple conversations can sometimes be invaluable in maintaining clarity and transparency in relationships. It's noteworthy that young children in families also learn about family bonds through how adults maintain those relationships. When children see their parents frequently meeting and maintaining close relationships with their siblings, they also develop a habit of valuing kinship. This helps pass on the tradition of closeness to future generations and ensures that family ties continue to be maintained for a long time. Ultimately, sibling bonds don't naturally strengthen over time without nurturing. Like any other relationship, it needs sincerity, care, and regular visits to be cultivated. When each person is willing to dedicate some time to checking in, meeting, and listening to the other, the relationship will always remain warm. It is these simple yet persistent actions that help sibling bonds not only exist in name, but truly become a lasting source of emotional support in each person's life. Siblings becoming distant isn't always due to fading affection. Sometimes it's simply because busy lives lead to fewer opportunities for interaction and less sharing. When each person starts their own family, the daily grind of work and responsibilities can easily lead us to think that contacting each other later is fine, or that visiting at a different time is okay. But it's these small delays, repeated many times, that silently create a large distance. And by the time we realize it, the closeness of the past is no longer what it used to be. Sibling love is like a small flame. If kept warm regularly, it will always burn brightly. But if left uncared for too long, it will gradually fade. A short phone call to check in, a text message wishing someone well, or a simple proactive visit is enough to remind each other that we still care. These small actions don't take much time, but have great value in maintaining the bond between siblings. In many families, just one person taking the initiative can gradually rekindle the connection. When one person starts by asking how the other is doing, others are more likely to open up, leading to more natural and frequent conversations. Taking the initiative isn't solely anyone's responsibility, but the person who initiates is often the one who keeps the warmth alive in the family. The important thing isn't who was right or wrong in the past, but who is willing to speak up so the relationship can continue. Understanding is also a crucial factor in maintaining lasting sibling relationships. Everyone has their own circumstances and pressures, so sometimes silence isn't indifference, but simply because they're busy or tired. When we understand this, we'll be less likely to blame and more empathetic. Empathy makes conversations smoother, helps everyone feel safe sharing, and brings them closer together. Life changes every day, but family bonds can still be maintained if each person takes a little time to care for one another. It doesn't need to be grand gestures. Just consistency and sincerity are enough to keep the family ties strong. As long as siblings can still see each other and check in, that's something to cherish. Because time passes and never returns, and opportunities to connect don't always come around. If you still have siblings, proactively maintain regular contact and create more opportunities to meet so that the bond is always nurtured. A simple greeting today can become a lasting source of warmth for the whole family. If you agree that family ties need to be cherished every day, please share this video so that more people can reflect on and appreciate the family relationships they have.